According to Wikipedia, climate is the long-term average of weather of a place, typically averaged over a period of 30 years. Hi everyone, and welcome to the 7th episode of Conversations with Stephen. My name is Stephen Izu. As I always say, we are young people and we talk about the life of young people. We have a future, and today we are going to talk about something related to our future. You know, what we're going to talk about is for our future, so we'll have to act now. Yes, it's for our future, but it means we have to do something now. Today we are talking about climate and climate change. With me today to discuss about this issue is Tolulope Gbenro. She was on the previous episode of this podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, ensure you do so now before progressing. Like, you need to go and listen to episode 6 if you haven't listened to it yet. Thank you very much. Tolulope Gbenro is a student at Covenant University, Otta. She's the special assistant to Mrs. Foluke Michaels on climate action. She has been a member of Enactus, Covenant University, Otta, since 2017. She's the head of planning and business ventures, Enactus, Covenant University, Otta. Tolu is part of the strategy and research team at Youth Sustainable Development Network. Yes. Let me take that again. Tolu is part of the strategy and research team at Youth Sustainable Development Network. And Tolulope Gbenro is the 2020-2021 Hult Prize Campus Director for Covenant University, Otta. Tolu, you are welcome to Conversations with Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you again. Yeah, so Tolu, I'm going to ask you my first question. What is climate?
Stephen already defined climate according to Wikipedia, but I would start by defining weather.
Okay.
Weather is the atmospheric condition of a particular place at a particular time, and climate is the average weather condition of a particular place at a particular time, taking over a period of years.
So how does it have to do with us then?
Basically, in Nigeria, we have two major climates. We have raining season and the dry season. The raining season runs from June to September, and the dry season runs from March to November. And in August, there's usually a break in the rain before the rainy season continues in September. So basically, the climate of a place affects almost everything. It affects what we eat. It affects the farm yield. It affects our choices of clothes, and most of the major decisions we'll have to take.
So it's obvious that climate is a very integral part of our life.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is our climate changing, like world climate? Is it changing, or it's just normal, like it just remains like that forever? Or is it changing?
Yes, the world's climate is changing, and there have been various reports that the world climate has been warmed by 1.5 degrees Celsius and should not warm any further, should not increase any further in the next 10 years. Another way to know if, or a way for a local person or a local man to tell if the weather or climate is changing is, let's just take a stroll back to when we were children. We'll remember during November, that should be around the first term of a new session. We are usually eager and happy to go to school because we want to see Hamatan, and the weather is cold and wet and dry at the same time. They're just moist and you hope this is just dry. But now it's really different. Sometimes the Harmattan season doesn't come until February compared to then. And remember, during the sunny seasons, or when it's sunny, when we were younger, it was not as hot as it is now. Even during the raining seasons, most of the time when it's sunny and you go out, it's really, really hot. And the temperatures have increased. Imagine having temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius or up to 33 degrees Celsius during the dry season in Nigeria, and having temperatures up to 29 degrees Celsius during the rainy season. And that's just for places like Port Harcourt and some of the coastal regions. Now, if you look at the northern part of Nigeria, that means it's going to be hotter and the temperature is going to be more intense. So yes, climate affects us, and climate has changed drastically over a few years. So basically, we have elements of weather and climate. We have temperature, which refers to the degree of hotness or coldness in a place and is measured with a thermometer. You can measure the temperature of a person, you can measure the temperature of a place, you can measure the temperature of an object. We have atmospheric pressure, we have humidity, precipitation. So all these elements of weather and climate make it easy for us to detect and to measure and to keep track of the changes that are happening. You may decide to note the temperature readings in the state where you are in now for the whole of September, and next year September the readings again, and when you compare the readings you would see the difference. That is a very good way to tell if the climate is changing or not. Thank you.
That was so good. So what caused our climate to change? Like, was it in it naturally to change after a certain period of time, or something propagated this change?
Climate change is propelled by anthropogenic factors, which basically revolve around human activities, environmental pollution, and pollutants. Yes, we have the greenhouse effect, where gases, heat, energy is reflected within a greenhouse, where Earth basically acts as the shield or the greenhouse, and all that happens. But human activity has made these effects to be more pronounced, to happen faster, to be more intense, and it has resulted in climate change. We can look at deforestation, or just using plants generally. We know humans use oxygen. We breathe in oxygen and we breathe out CO2. And plants take in CO2 we breathe out, and the plants breathe out oxygen rather, or they use CO2 and they bring out oxygen. So if you have an ecosystem, or in an ecosystem where you have little plants or few plants, it is not balanced. And CO2 is a greenhouse gas. So if we keep breathing out CO2 and there are no plants to utilize the CO2 that we are breathing out, it just makes everything worse. And that's part of the causes of climate change. Aside the whole plant illustration and ecosystem illustration, there are a number of things that humans do, a number of activities we engage in. Example, gas flaring, burning of fossil fuel, and so on and so forth. They also cause climate change.
Okay, I learned from that. So it's from what you just said. Can I infer that humans are a major cause of climate change?
Yes, humans are a major cause of climate change.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much, Tolu. We've made good progress in this episode. I'm going to ask you a few more questions, and then I'll give you the opportunity to say what you have to say, if you don't mind. Okay. My next question is this. What does this change mean for our future? Like, what happens if we don't do anything, and will there be any positive change or changes if we do something now in regards to climate change?
Yes, if we do something now, we'll be able to reverse some of the effects that climate change has caused. But if we don't do anything about climate change, there is no positive effect that humans or the planet is going to feel. They're just more of negative effect. Let's take food insecurity, for instance. Africa basically has a lot of food crisis. People find it difficult to feed themselves. And in some African countries, the region where they have fertile soil, they are taken by developed countries, and companies from developed countries use them to farm. So the locals are left with non-fertile soil, and with the increase in temperature and other effects, change in the seasons, change in rainy seasons, change in dry seasons, it doesn't make it easy for people to get food. We can even use Nigeria as a very practical example. This year, the corn yield was small. You could barely see corns that were big, healthy. Most of the corns that were sowed from this rainy season, they were really small, and they had kind on the corn hobs. So that's also an effect of climate change. Another thing climate change causes is inequality. It increases inequality between developed countries and developing countries. There are a number of protocols and laws in place regarding climate change, and take for example the Paris Protocol or the Kyoto Protocol. We have systems where countries are to reduce the production and use of greenhouse gases, developed countries, and they are to contribute money to help developing countries. But it is not so easy to do that, because as much as someone in America would want to scream climate change, if you are screaming that in Nigeria, I mean, we talk about climate change, but people don't take it important, because people are struggling with the basic necessities of life. So if they don't have food, clothing, shelter, why should they be bothered about the climate? If they have a little shade over their head, that's what matters to most people. And it affects the insecurity between developed and developing countries in that area. Another thing we can look at is gender. It increases inequality between genders. Most females engage in farming activities in Africa, and it's not easy. Most of the time when you go out, you want to buy vegetable, ugu leaf, water leaf. People know what they go through to farm. At a certain period, you can have over 15 sticks of ugu leaf for 15 naira. But during the dry season, you will get half that quantity for that price as a result of climate change. And another thing, or another negative effect of climate change, is human rights. Climate change affects the right to life, affects right to health, right to housing, right to clean water and sanitation. Oftentimes, we hear countries having disputes, fighting over a source of water, because the major sources of water, maybe major dams, major streams in different countries, have dried up, which means even animals and humans have to travel for long distances in villages to get food, water, and some people even die on their journey. They don't eventually get to the location or to the stream to get what they need. So the effects of climate change are numerous, and they are basically negative effects.
That's so much. But are people doing anything to remedy change to these negative effects?
Yes. People are doing a lot of things to remedy climate change. This conversation is an example of what people are doing. People are advocating, people are educating, people are planting trees. Oftentimes when political leaders are elected, governors, local government chairman, you hear plant a tree campaign, or they try to build gardens, and it helps. It may look like something minute, probably because we don't have so much report of those things going on in our country, but it does go a long way. Another thing we can do, or people do, is to reduce their food mile. When you eat locally sourced meal, it doesn't travel over a particular distance or travel for a particular number of miles, so it reduces the carbon emission. But if I sit down and say I want to eat strawberry, I know strawberry is not grown where I live in Nigeria, and before the strawberry gets to me, it's going to travel over certain distances. So that's increasing carbon emission. So basically, we know consumers control the market. but for celebration, the producers control the market. So if consumers sit down and say we would eat locally sourced meat, we will eat more of gari, we'll eat more of fufu, we'll eat more of cassava, we'll eat more of rice, we'll eat more of tomatoes, we'll eat more of local vegetables, is going to reduce the food miles. It means the producers would not have to ship in so much goods from other part of the world to their area. Another thing people do is use green energy. There has been so much advocacy for solar cars, solar panels, and other sorts of renewable energy, wind turbines, water, etc, etc. So yes, a lot is being done about climate change.
Wow. I'm honestly happy to hear that people are doing something, and actually I myself am doing this, but that's what, just as you said, that's why we are having this conversation. I was checking when I was preparing for this episode. I was checking some facts, some data about climate changes and its effects, and I watched a few TEDx speeches. So, and after that, I was so shocked, and I was like, this is what is happening on Earth, and I have no idea. So I was determined to do what I can, and I'm happy that we have this conversation going. Hopefully, I'm going to do more myself. So what can I do myself? Like, what can the average young person out there do? You have talked about food miles, how we should reduce food miles. We should choose more of locally prepared foods. But let's take, for instance, a young person, like a young student in college. What can he or she do to fight against the negative effect of climate change? Yeah.
Generally, advocacy is very important. Advocacy and education, they are two different things, but they are similar. When we talk about advocacy, we are saying you should fight for something. You should let people know this is wrong and they should stop doing it. So we can advocate against deforestation. We can advocate against the use of fossil fuel. We can advocate for the use of renewable sources of energy. And we can educate people. Climate change is not just caused by food, plants, animals, the whole CO2 cycle. There is much more. Take, for instance, our waste system. A number of greenhouse gases are generated from those massive waste. If we have a waste system where everything is sorted into food, plastic, metal, hazardous, and they are sent directly to the recycling companies, it's going to go a long way. Take, for instance, plastic. Plastics are a huge monetary commodity. Recently in Nigeria, a number of people have been going into the plastic selling business, reusing business, not necessarily recycling. So if we have recycling companies, it's going to reduce the amount of CO2 that is used in producing new plastics. Another thing is paper recycling, the paper recycling industry. Oftentimes you see paper cups or paper bags used in movies, and you think and say Coca-Cola has a dispenser or has dispensers in US and developed countries. Why do not have those things in Nigeria? If they bring those things to Nigeria, we don't have a system for paper recycling. We are still fighting plastic recycling. So it's just going to add to the waste and so on and so forth. Another thing is food waste. We waste food a lot. Oftentimes when people go to the supermarket, we are deciding on what kind of banana to buy. Banana in the market is the same banana in the supermarket. It still has the same nutrients. And luckily for us in Nigeria, most of the things sold in supermarkets are organic, and most of the things sold in the markets are organic. But we still decide, and no, it's market square. No, it's back. I want this one. I want to say I have this bag and all that. All those frivolities are really unnecessary. So we should also try to minimize food waste. Another thing we can do is travel less. Like I said, with reference to the food mile, traveling also increases our carbon footprint, because most of the engines used for traveling are still run on fossil. Yes, they are renewable sources of energy, but they are not as pronounced as fossil. And another thing I would say is calculate your Earth overshoot day. Earth overshoot day is the estimated day where the Earth is to use up its resources. So what you're basically doing is you're using a website that has been programmed to say, if I eat 10 eggs in a week, if I drink 2 bottles of milk in a week, if I eat 1 cow in a year, that's averagely. Or if I live in this kind of house, if I travel this frequently, and if everybody lives the same way I live, consuming the same quantity of things I consume, how long will it take the earth to replenish its resources? It's like Nigeria, basically. We would say we are consumers. We produce things, but we produce little. We don't produce as much as we consume. So when we have goods being imported into the country, the quantity of what we are exporting is less than half of what leaves. It's the same thing for us. So if we are using in the earth and we are not replenishing them at the rate we are using them, or faster than the rate we are using them, there's going to be a problem. So if people know these things and if people calculate that, it's going to make them conscious of the way they live and conscious of the decisions they take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tolu. There's a lot of knowledge stored in you. You have a lot of knowledge. Very good knowledge bank. I'm very privileged to know a person like you. We have talked about how and what I can do and what we young people should do, advocating against environmental pollution, all of that. So how can and where can I keep up with the latest information and news and development on world climate? Because personally, when I do things, I want to really know that I'm doing something. So I don't just want to do it because they say we should fight against climate. So where can I keep up with the progress or lack of progress in world climate, like a website or somewhere where I can get good and credible information, whether the world climate is getting better or is getting worse?
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Stephen. Young people and people generally can keep up with quality and certified information about climate change from different news and media outlets like CNN, BBC, DWs. They have a lot of educative shows and there are a lot of wonderful documentaries. There's a documentary by Netflix, Our Planet. It was released last year, but I didn't even know about it until this year. So people should focus more on watching documentaries and it will let them know a whole lot of things. Another thing is to read reports. You can read financial reports, you can read UN reports. In either June ending or early July, a report was published by the UN about the 4 focus SDGs that had been improved on in Nigeria in the second quarter. But a number of people don't know about these things. And you can also read research papers. And on social media, not every day you open the news or you check news headlines and you see, because there are other pressing issues. But on the social media pages of certified news outlets, like I said earlier, CNN, BBC, DW, Fox News, so on and so forth, you will see programs and series or events where they talk about these things and where they advocate for them. And generally, young people have begun advocating for this, just like this conversation we are having. There are people that have climate-focused podcasts. There are people that have climate social media pages just to advocate for climate change or to advocate for whatever area of climate change, maybe greenhouse effect or tree planting generally. So there's a whole lot, or there are many viable sources of information when it comes to climate change. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Tolu. Thank you so much for that valuable information. Do you have any concluding words? I've been able to ask you the questions that I intended to ask. So, your concluding words on climate and climate action?
Yes, I would just say something briefly.
Okay.
I want to say climate change is real. Climate change is happening. Climate change affects our lives. It affects what we eat. It affects everything. It affects our choices of clothes. It affects what materials are used to make the clothes we want to wear, or what materials are used to make the fabrics. But just because we have other pressing issues, if we are to make a scale of preference, just we have pressing issues like food insecurity and so on, does not mean climate change should be avoided for now or should not be talked about. And because you're famous celebrity or your famous political leader does not believe in climate change doesn't mean you should just decide not to believe in climate change or you should decide not to believe in something. I think young people should look for facts and evidence, and like I've already said, it's very simple to do the experiment. Sit down every day and just do it for a month and calculate and check the increased temperature or the change in pressure or whatever to see if there has been a change in the last 1 year or in the last 1 week. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Tolu. I'm very, very grateful for having you on my podcast. Today we learned a lot, and I'm sure that what we learned and what I learned and what you learned, you guys listening, is going to remain with us forever. Well, hopefully not forever, because we don't hope to fight climate change forever. In the next few years, we should be done with this. Yeah, Tolu Gbenro, thank you so much for coming to Conversations with Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm grateful to everyone that listened to this episode of Conversations with Stephen. My name is Stephen Izo. Thank you so much. If you learned a lot, do well to share this with a friend of yours, because we are young people and we talk about the life of young people. So I guess you are not the only young person on earth. So if you are young and you learn something from this, share it with your friend share it with a friend of yours who is young and let them also learn. I'm grateful to God for the opportunity to be able to host this podcast. If you have a question, a suggestion, or a topic you feel we should talk about on here, it should be something that relates with young people. Yeah. Send me an email. Send an email to cwstephen20@gmail.com. Let me spell that out. CWSTEPHEN. Okay, slowly. CWSTEPHEN 20@gmail.com. Like figure 2 and figure 0 at gmail.com. Yeah, send me an email. I would love to get your feedback. Thank you once again, everyone. Bye bye, and see you next time.